It is Boxing Day of 2018 and I'm staying at my gram's house for the night. But on this particular night, I just can't seem to get to sleep. I'm tossing and turning and I eventually end up going onto YouTube to watch YouTube videos in bed. But about 10 minutes into doing this, I get the fattest chub that I have ever had. Now, in the past when this would happen, I would just ignore them because there was no urge to do the deed, if you know what I mean. There was no urge to release my energy. So I'm lying in bed waiting for it to take its course and go away like it usually does. But instead, I actually get this urge for the first time ever. Now, I'd been exposed to this degenerate stuff in the past, Korn. I had watched it from about 10 years old, but on this particular night, I actually had the urge to watch it. It wasn't just out of the enjoyment of watching it, the stimulation. Keep in mind, I'm 11 at this time, all right? So I walk down the hall to the bathroom, I lock the door behind me, and I pull up the hub and start watching some of the recommended videos. I then get going and I'm going faster and faster, Jack and the Rabbit. The more I go, the better it feels. And about 2 minutes in, I'll never forget this, I get this rush throughout my entire body. It was like nothing I had ever felt before. And obviously, this was my very first, I guess I'll just say, here on YouTube. I had just experienced the first step of what was to be a very tragic downfall for me in high school. All right, so after I discovered that I was able to do this, I began to watch it every single day from that point onwards. I remember going home and telling my brothers, which are obviously older than me, so they could already do it. They knew their potential, and so they were teaching me all this stuff. And they, obviously they thought it was fine that I was exposed to Korn at the time as well. And I think this is a huge problem in itself. We're not taught in school how bad this stuff actually is for our brains. In fact, most of the TV shows and our peers around us promote it as being a healthy thing. It's normal, everyone does it. You're actually weird if you don't do it. I remember there were kids in school who, we'd talk about it with them and they would find it weird that we did it, and we would find them so incredibly weird that they didn't. Around the same time, I started watching this show on Netflix, which was a bit too explicit for an 11-year-old kid, to say the least. Now, the title of this show was Big Mouth. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen that, and you will know why I say an 11-year-old kid should not have been watching it. This just promoted it more and more in my brain. It made me normalize it. I thought that watching Korn was a normal part of the teenager experience, but little did I know, it was only a normal part of the Gen Z teenager experience. Never before has there been a generation so addicted to dopamine as Gen Z. Like, just the stuff we've been made to glorify and think is normal and think is okay, Korn, watching all this degenerate stuff like movies, going out to parties. It's like a popularity competition almost. No generation before us has been indulged into it to the level that Gen Z actually are. Now, after having watched this show for about a month, I have my first day of year 7, I'm starting high school. And by this point, I would say it had rubbed off on me so much, like thinking it's normal, that I was watching it about 1, 2, maybe 3 times a day. And then it gets to the period of time that we had to stay indoors back in 2020. So a lot of you will know what I'm talking about. I believe it was about March, maybe April, and we had to stay inside for a couple of months, right? I start watching it about 4 or 5 times a day. My schedule looked a little something like this. I would hop up about 12 o'clock, 1 p.m, midday. I would have a fap as soon as I would wake up, go to the toilet, and then I would jump straight on the game. I'd play Fortnite for 3 or 4 hours. 4 p.m. would always be my first meal of the day. I would then watch it a couple more times in between games of Fortnite, have another meal at like 8 o'clock, watch it a couple more times. I'll play video games till about 2 to 3 a.m, watch it again, go to bed, and that cycle was repeated for those couple months we had off school. It literally just consumed my life. I was your typical lazy teenage kid, like a straight up loser, Luke the loser, you could say. I was playing video games. I had so many different vices, but video games and Korn were probably the worst ones in my life at the time. Like, no shit, I would not get any sunlight. Every food that I would eat would be some processed garbage, like with ingredients you can't even pronounce on the back of them, just plastic packaging BS. All right, but we go back to school and I obviously cut back on it. I cut back on the games. I'm not playing video games. I'm not watching Corn as much because I don't have as much free time on my hands. So I'll go back to watching it maybe once, twice a day, playing video games for maybe an hour or two. But it gets to grade 8, so 2021, the next year. And I get my very first girlfriend. As some of you will know, I've spoken about it in these videos here. I was flirting with this girl in class. We start hanging out more and more. She ends up becoming my girlfriend. And it's at the same time that I discover that corn is actually really bad for you. I remember seeing this TikTok of some guy talking about it, and it displayed a chart of a addict compared to a corn addict. And the corn addict's brain was more deteriorated than the person on. And suffice to say, I was flabbergasted at the time. Like, it scared me. So you would think after that I would quit. You know, I had a lot of reasons to. I was now in a relationship. I didn't need to be looking at girls in that manner. And I now knew how bad it was for me. Now, although I was in a relationship, I wasn't doing anything like that with this girl. So it made it like 100 times worse, because now the desire to release my energy was there even more so than it was before, because now I had this girl in the equation who I was constantly thinking about. And so the only way to release my energy was through means of degeneracy. All right, so fast forward a few months later, it gets to, I would say, about May, June, and I discover this challenge, the 75 hard. And it speaks about all these discipline habits. You got to eat a really strict diet for 75 days, do 2 workouts a day, one outside, 1 in the gym, whatever. But there was an option to add your own rules to it. And I had just recently seen a few videos popping up on TikTok about NoFap. I had no idea what it was, but I was discovering all of the benefits to it, increased testosterone, better sleep, better skin quality. And I had quite bad acne at the time. So I was like, sign me up to this shit. I'll just add this as a rule onto my 75 hard, and I'll stop watching corn, I'll stop fapping. And because I just discovered this whole self-improvement space, I thought this was my time to finally make a change. I was gonna stop doing all of the degenerate stuff that I had been doing and start to level up. I was gonna finally build the physique that I wanted. I was gonna finally have the loving relationship that I wanted. I was gonna do all these amazing things, quit corn. I could never seem to get more than 1 week in. I remember 1 week, I did the entire 7 days. I get to the 8th day and I don't get up corn hub, but I release my energy in the shower one day. Straight back to square one, which meant the next day was even worse. I watched corn again. Although I had relapsed on that, I still didn't want to let that define how my 75 hard went. So I kept on the diet, I kept on the training, and I completely stayed away from all the stuff that I had been doing before. No more parties, no more staying up late doing degenerate things, sneaking out late at night. I completely gave all of it up for nearly 2 months, but slowly but surely it creeped its way back in. I went back to doing all that stuff. Got myself into this super toxic relationship with not only myself, but with my girlfriend, and that was at large fault of my own. But we fast forward to August of 2022. I break up with my girlfriend because we've just been fighting so much. It's been non-stop for the past month. Every single day, go to school, we argue, she ditches me to hang out with her friends, I hang out alone, we make up that night, and then the same thing continued every single day. So I finally cut ties with her. Now, once we had broken it off, I had so much more free time on my hands, and I was a lazy loser Luke. So suffice to say, the corn consumption ramps up. I'll go from watching it from what was about 1 time a day at this point, sometimes I wouldn't even watch it, to now 4, 5 times a day. And I'll bring a lot of the other degenerate habits in that I had, sort of veered away from whilst I was in a relationship, because I had no one there to tell me otherwise. I didn't have any friends, and now I had no girlfriend. So no one was there to say, oh, don't do that, bro. It's not a good idea. You know, please don't do that. Take care of yourself. Now, I kept this up until around February of 2023. I eventually just felt so shit that I knew nothing was going to change unless I did. It was almost like I had the realization that in order to become the man that I wanted to be, it meant completely sacrificing the man that I currently was. And you know, it wasn't just a flick of the switch, something major happened. You know, the court case, which I speak about in this video here, that happened, and that was sort of what got me on the right track. I literally have not looked back from that point. But even after I quit all the degenerate nonsense, you know, parties, pills, etc., the hardest thing for me to quit was corn. I kept watching it every single day. I remember I dropped out of school. I didn't have a job. I said I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't have a plan put into place. I was hopping up at like 9 or 10 o'clock every single day. The only productive thing I would do was, you know, eat my meals, go to the gym, go about my day in that way. I wouldn't do any productive work towards my business. And I was watching corn, once again, 4 or 5 times a day. And I remember I was in this vicious loop at the time. This was the worst it had ever gotten. And I was off of everything else. I would say, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. You know, it's not that hard. I'm not addicted. You know, I'll just start tomorrow and I'll completely quit it and I'll do all the business work tomorrow. And then tomorrow would come and I'd use the same excuse. And I repeated that for about 2 or 3 months until I finally got a full-time job in June of 2023. But when it does get to June, I actually took a step back and looked at where I was at in life, looked at how long I had been on the path that I was on, and I realized that no motion had been made in my life. I just let this past year go by, set all these big goals for myself, and not even got a fraction closer to them because I had my priorities all wrong. I wasn't focusing on anything. I could not stay consistent for the life of me. I would go one day, one good day, and then the next, I couldn't be bothered. I would just waste time again and again and again. And these excuses compounded over a 365-day period to bring you the lazy scum that you would have seen in front of you in June of 2023. Focus is the most important thing as an entrepreneur, or even just as a person trying to reach their goals for that matter. If you can't focus on something for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, you are not going to achieve anything worth mentioning. You look at the best entrepreneurs, the best athletes, the most intellectual people in the world, they all share something in common, and that is their ability to focus for a long period of time, their ability to stay consistent over a long period of time. And as soon as I realized this, I assessed where my focus, where my time, where my energy was going, and I realized that none of the places I was dedicating these resources was ever going to help me get anywhere fast. Now, once I realized this, I did stop watching corn. I completely stopped watching it. Now, sure, it was hard, but I put my focus towards something which I saw to be a good cause at the time. I saw it to be something that was very productive and I loved doing it, and I wanted to grow in that field. I started pursuing music. I was posting on TikTok probably like 3 or 4 times a week, making as many songs as I could to the best of my abilities, and I did improve. By this point, I'd already been making music for 6 months, but it just wasn't getting any better. You know, the flow wasn't there. All the beats I would go on, they sounded cracking, but then my lyrics sounded terrible because I was not focused. I could not for the life of me improve until I finally dedicated my efforts to this one thing. I had to understand the type of person who reaches the goals that I hope to reach does not do any of the things that I was currently doing at the time. That person does not drink, that person does not smoke, that person does not watch porn. They don't waste time. So how could I, the person who does all of that, expect to get to that level still doing those things? I set my focus on one thing, which I eventually ended up quitting in April of 2024 to pursue something much greater, which is what you are seeing right now. And I never looked back. But the main lesson that I was able to extract from this whole experience was that focus is my greatest asset, and it's your greatest asset as well. Where your focus goes is where you will see the results. If you focus on the wrong things, you're going to see results in the wrong things. All right, now I hope this video helped you. If it did, there's a link in the description for my free community where there is a bunch of like-minded individuals such as yourself, and I think you could find a lot of value in this. So if that sounds like something that may interest you, just click that link. Stay grinding, G.